Just fucking do it. Subscribe now. As I said the first morning that I was going to show you the few deals that came in so far this year, even though this closed on the 28th of February, it came in maybe 3 weeks ago. This is what's possible, but it's not a typical deal. To do this kind of deal, you actually have to know something about healthcare, which I tell you not to. But unfortunately for him, this guy is a seasoned Mayo Clinic executive, former, recovering, so he knows a lot about healthcare. And when he uses his name, remember I talked about the Goldman Sachs shield? When he uses the Mayo Clinic shield, everybody falls down. Or the Cleveland Clinic, or one of those big, huge hospital organizations. Full disclosure, I'm chairman. And but it's a great deal. And if you look through, the seller paid him $3.6 million, and all the things, not all, that's an exaggeration, that's a Trumpism. A lot of the things that I say are possible, like getting them to pay you, happen in this deal. And SBA was involved at the max. And most people use SBA, the Small Business Administration, in the United States for their first deal and second deal, and then they ratcheted up to $5 million worth, and so they've got maybe 2 or 3 deals. And then the idea is to refinance. Rarely does the SBA fund 100%, or not 100%, allow you to use the $5 million full amount on a deal when it's part of other financing. And there's all kinds of bells and whistles. And one of the hardest things to get seller finance is when you refinance it, and they keep any of the finance. In other words, you keep some of the note, or the seller keeps some of the note, is that they have to be subordinated, and they don't understand that. Subordinated means in second or third or fourth position, but they don't understand that. And so it's by that time when you're refinancing, you've done 3 or 4 or 5 deals, so you're better in a position to explain to them what it means to be a subordinator in second, third position. But again, it starts with a motivated seller. This is a pretty good deal. It's in the middle of nowhere, in Fuckville, Iowa, or something. I mean, the story goes, and I had lunch with him in Chicago a few months ago, and he kept telling me, he's been telling me for a year it's going to close. Just like you're going to write me, and I don't want to, don't write me, please don't update me, but you're going to write me and tell me how this is going to close, and then it never does. But hope springs eternal, Well, this one did finally close about a year and 7 or 8 months after he had told me it was closing next month, because shit happens. I mean, this guy, more things happened to this deal than I could tell I could spend a week telling you about. It went wrong. But it finally closed. And the old adage, he never gave up. He's an actually in the Marines and the Navy. He was a corpsman. And then he got an MBA someplace, school you got to explain about. And he went to work for Mayo, and he was there a long time, and got to be a relatively senior position. And then he wears that Mayo shield. But you can do this too. Now, this is the last one that happened like this. It's not the only one, and he happens to have the Mayo shield. Not everybody has the Mayo shield. In fact, very few have the Mayo Clinic shield. But this is what's possible. It just happened to be more recent. And in the meantime, supporting himself, because he's got to make a living, he did some other things. And he changed his lifestyle before this deal ever came. He's moved into a big new house. He's driving a Ferrari, blah, 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 blah. And then this happened. But he's been working on this for a long time. And if you can see, casually, there's a lot of moving pieces. And the SBA doesn't want to get final approval until the shit's in place. And just because you tell the SBA this is going to happen, the SBA is smart enough to know it hardly ever happens. So I think he went through 3 SBA local administrators in this deal. And when the new administrator comes, you got to start all from the beginning again. And the third, he never told me he was going to give up, but you can tell in the sound of voice, you know. But it's got some neat things in it. And it's not a big deal, but it's a bigger deal by a factor of probably 5 or 10 than the average first deal. Now I'm going to use this to talk about SBA. This is an unusual SBA in that SBA is only normally the 100% of the commercial debt or debt in place, and this is SBA is only part of it. But it's the only in QLA, the quiver, the arrows we have in our quiver, is the only thing that you have to guarantee. Because by federal statute, the SBA says John Henry's on the line. And when Josh was doing this, Josh had a bicycle, right? And so his guarantee is worthless. But the federal government says somebody's goddamn name has got to be on the line. So that's the downside of this, because I don't believe in personal guarantees or anything other than non-recourse money. Non-recourse meaning if the world goes to hell in a handbasket, you don't have to pay it back. It's not a license to go get a bunch of money and then run to Bolivia or Argentina or something, although we've had some of the kids do that. Of course, we've had kids drive up with their minivan to the bank and take 10 million pounds out and go to Kathmandu and disappear. We've had kids drive up to ING Bank and take 25 million out, and they're never seen again. So we have those, and they're on not all of them are on the Hall of Shame. And as I told you, I think the first night or the first morning, that we've got guys running from Interpol. Not guys, one guy, who took $241 million in cash and ran like a thief in the night. So we have those. And when people want to poke fun or take the QLA model apart, and you'll experience this, they find those. And then they come back to you and say, what the fuck? You don't know a fucking thing. Blah, blah, blah. And this guy ran with $240 million and Interpol's after him. Okay? They don't talk about go to the trouble to find this or Marcus Bauer or TK, etc. But SBA, currently $5 million max. Now, some countries around the world have an equivalent of an SBA. Germany used to. Doesn't anymore, under Merkel. God love her. But you got to ask. If you don't ask, what? You don't get. Just as when you go to the banks this afternoon, we're going to talk about how when I say get money, I'm not talking about taking it. I'm talking about convincing them that you're a good credit so they should loan to you. That's what I mean by get money. If you don't ask, you don't get. If you don't ask for non-recourse money, you're certainly not ever going to get any non-recourse money. So about 15 or 20% of the banks in America have SBA. And there are certain headquartered 4 or 5 districts in the United States. It's not important. And there's 4 or 5 or 6 of the banks within those many dozens of banks in the United States that they specialize in SBA loans. And so they would normally open up their rhetoric with an SBA loan if it's less than $5 million. Because there's a mandatory guarantee, and it's a federal guarantee. Now, some of the SBA banks are going to tell you that you got to put money up. That's not what the federal statute says. But you, because who you are, you roll over, lift your cheeks, and just, believe them. SBA banks are different, so that means you got to contact a lot of them. if the first 2 or 3 don't tell you what you want to hear. But the truth of the matter is you don't have to put up any money. And now because, I don't know if it's because of the QLA, but because so many people are applying for SBA loans, there's different ways to structure it where, in essence, you can take the seller's finance as part of the equity to put the equity up that the SBA wants. And so the words, and it's in your thumb drive. Well, I understand that, but I'm also aware that the federal statute doesn't say, other than I having to guarantee it, that I got to put my own money up. And then they'll, depending on the banker, and if the banker likes you, the look of you, he'll iterate or reiterate what the minimum requirements. You want the minimum requirements on an SBA loan. Minimum requirements for you be on the hook. Just as we're looking for, when our documentation is put together, when we're forming the company, you want major shareholder friendly, you want minimum requirements. What are the minimum? What are the minimum requirements? And sometimes they'll tell you, sometimes they won't. But there are 10 or 20 banks in America that will go down that road. And it makes it much easier. But the but is, it takes longer for an SBA loan. Remember I told you 6.5 weeks, approximately, the average for a commercial loan now in this environment? Well, add 4 weeks to 8 weeks on an SBA loan. Add 4 to 8. There's no reason for that other than it's 4 to 8 weeks longer. It's not a shortage of employees. It's not staffing. It's not any of the bullshit. It just takes longer. Arguably, it's because they have to go through 1 or 2 more approval processes. But the federal government is guaranteeing that loan. So if they ask you for 10 or 20%, or as little as 5%, what they're doing is trying to mitigate their risk even beyond the federal guarantee. And that's normally because you either don't look right, you don't sound right, you don't smell right, for some reason. But for the most part, not 100%, but almost 100% of the kids that wear the uniform and use the words get the money from the SBA. It's not quite 100% because, you fuck something up. Now, I'm not there in the meeting, so I can't tell you what you fuck up, but you fuck something up. You say the wrong thing. Now, you heard yesterday in the webinars, you go with your CFO and maybe one industry expert. And I started to say, and then I got off track, about you got to coach when you take the fucking directors, even though they have volumes of knowledge more than you do. You got to coach them what the fuck say, what to say. In other words, more importantly, what not to say. We've had CFOs, 40 years with KPMG or one of the big 4 accounting firms. I don't know why it works, but it works. Why would you say that? Other than you're brain dead. Because they're out of their comfort zone. When you give them the 4 or 5 points, and again, it's in the thumb drive, 4 or 5 points, don't say that, don't say that, don't say you've never done a deal with no equity. I mean, now a kid, a streetwise kid doing drugs on the corner, a street corner, no better. What not to say. Or your kids are trying to bullshit you, you caught them doing something bad, no better. But these morons that ostensibly are finance professionals don't. And so you go to the SBA, but you take a CFO and an industry expert to all the financial meetings, not just the SBA. Not just the SBA. Some of the SBA want an evaluation of the deal, like the property. But we're not doing property. Right? So the dentist, you can keep your fucking office in your building and stick it up your ass and save it for your second retirement. We're not interested in collateral. Where 25, 30 years, his accountants have been telling him that's his retirement, the building. So a lot of deals don't get done. When I say a lot, maybe 10 or 15% of the deals, generally speaking, even out of the auspices of SBA, because the motivated seller who's motivated knows his building's worth $1, $2, $3, $4 million. It's paid off normally. And he was led to believe for many, many years, wrongfully, that that's the anchor of his retirement plan. But you'll get over that. And if a lot of those guys come back, when you say next and you walk out the door, whatever, or you hang up the phone, then they realize, because they tried once or twice to sell their business, and not everybody wants the real estate, especially since real estate prices, not all over the world, but in many parts of the world, are falling. In Manhattan and Beverly Hills, and some of the places I told you yesterday. So the SBA loan, you will have a SBA, like a not engagement partner, but a credit officer that will be your interplay or your interface. Some of the SBA loans, not many, but some of them preclude you refinancing in the first year or two. You don't want that. And they're going to give you a form. And Moses and Muhammad are the only two people that have ever had those fucking forms, and me, have ever had those form documents changed. They'll say it can't be changed. They'll tell you all kind of bullshit, which is bullshit. It can be changed. Just as you can renegotiate your credit card interests, even though they say you can't, you can. And every 15 or 20 months, when we used to use outside credit more than we do now, we'd call up American Express, or we'd call up whoever. I wouldn't call anybody. Somebody would call and say that, I see the interest rate's up to 14.5%. We'd like to renegotiate it. And they say no. And I said, well, then, Mr. Peña, I'd like to cancel the credit cards. Then they go into panic mode, and they, the manager comes and so you can renegotiate these things. I once asked my dad a long time ago, when he was alive, in the little shit-ass neighborhood I'm from, they have mortgage burning parties. And when you pay off your mortgage after 20, 25, 30 years, they get together on a big 55-gallon drum, and they burn the mortgages that they just paid off. And they have a barbecue, get drunk up. Hey! And I asked my dad, why are they burning? The only proof they have, they own the fucking house. Tradition! Anyway, so and I won't say the SBA is looser on credits. That's the wrong way to say it. I won't say that they don't look deep enough to know that you're a fucking bum. But a combination of those and the fact that the federal government guarantees them makes them, in a lot of ways, easier. And other banks will look favorably at the fact that you have an SBA loan. Now, veterans, I don't know if it's changed, as of 2-3 years ago, could walk in to an SBA bank and get a $250,000 loan, you call a line of credit, with almost no bullshit. Vet, $250. Not a wounded, one-legged, one-titted vet, but just a regular vet. I've never done that, but I do know vets that have done it. And the federally guaranteed various schemes or programs in the United States are supposed to look more favorably on veterans. Some do and some don't. I've never partaken. When I got out of the military, they had a GI Bill, a thing called GI Bill, where you could go to school and buy a house. And for next to nothing, no interest, not no interest, but low interest. But the loans they had for houses, my cars were more. And so I never used it for a house. And I didn't use it for the GI Bill either. I'm going to go to school. But there's dozens of vet programs. And the program I've never been able to get on television, Boots to Suits, the transition from active duty military to business, has never resonated in any of the big stations or even small stations. Okay, so now you when you call the bank, your pitch is slightly different than when you're just calling to warm up the bank to find out if they're in the lending mode. I see you participated in this $13 billion offering with Cardinal Health, blah, 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 blah. Are you still in that lending mode in the vertical assisted living or home health? And they say yes. And then you extract from them what is the EBITDA, as I told you. And they say 3 to 5 or 3 to 5.5. What's your sweet spot? Blah, blah. Slightly different now. You get on the phone. Are you participated? Blah, blah, blah. Do you have a SBA program that goes along with your activity in healthcare, vertical assisted living, home health? They'll say yes or no, or they'll send you to another bank that they refer all their SBA business to. And it's not that they're putting you off, it's just that they don't do it. Because there is more paperwork, and even though it's not paperwork anymore, everything is electronic. They make it sound like the old days when you had to fill out papers like this. But that's not the case anymore. But there's still a stigma in banking that there's more work associated with an SBA credit. And that's absolutely true. But the work is maybe an hour, 2 hours. They're just fucking lazy. Okay. And so they'll say yes, and then I'll say, can I speak to the SBA loan officer or credit officer? And they'll try to get you in, as I told you, because they have a script too to try to get you in. And the SBA officer may be sitting right next to the other guy, but he is there. And we've had, and that's how Josh Kim got started, amongst many others of the kids that we've talked about, or I've talked about the last 30 years. And it's not easy, but it's easier in the sense that once you have a government guaranteed, you can use that as your shield. Well, the federal government saw fit to, and why not you? But then again, in full disclosure, some banks don't do it because it's extra paperwork. But there is not a deal in this room or that's ever been in this room that can't do an SBA loan. It's not possible. Or to date, 30 plus years, it hasn't been possible. And if you're in Germany, even though they don't have that anymore, but France, wherever, Australia, and they have guarantee schemes, as they're called. The UK has a guarantee scheme. Its name escapes me right now. But there are others. And individual states in the United States have state guaranteed schemes, plans. And I'm not up to with all the 50 states, but there are. And they normally change from, when the Democrats come in or the Republicans come in, and they change, But your industry experts and your board should know that. Are there any guaranteed plans that we can look for money? In this country, they call them grants. I'm not sure why, but that's what they call them. And the University of Chicago used to have grants. Bank of America used to have special grants. And I mentioned yesterday, I think one of the one-on-ones, the bank